now watching Wayback Wednesday, sponsored by Davenport Auto Park, the ride of your life. And also sponsored by Flores Glass, serving the area since 1977 with residential and commercial work.
Welcome to another episode of Wayback Wednesday. I'm Randy Adcock. So glad you could be with us tonight. After last week's show, immediately after showing off the air, we got a call from one of our viewers who shared some information with us about one of the topics that we talked about last week. If you remember, we were talking a little bit about the patio restaurant, the lady, Miss Ruby Hooks, that ran that restaurant. And I had never heard of it, surely never ate there, and I wasn't sure exactly where it was. But Randy knew exactly where it was. Randy Sutton called in and told us where it was, and so we've got a couple of pictures to share with you about that. Also, there was a topic about, if you remember, we were talking about Hoggard Van Motors, the automobile dealer over on Church Street, and back in the 1940s, there was, in fact, I think Eric called in and mentioned that there was a picture somewhere about Hoggard Van Motors and an automobile with automatic transmission. That was, I'm not exactly sure how the story went, but something along the lines of they had arranged for this disabled person to have a car with an automatic transmission. So I went in search of that, and I got a couple of pictures from Wallace Abernathy. He sent me a couple of pictures, and so we'll talk a little bit about that too. In fact, I'll tell you what let's do. Let's go ahead and jump in, and let's go ahead and put up item number one just to refresh folks' memory. This is from the 1963 Rocky Mount City Directory. This ad appeared it was called the Patio Restaurant, in fact, and it was run by Lady Mrs. Ruby Hooks, H-O-O-K-S is her last name, Ruby Hooks, and the address was only 301 Bypass South, not a street address, of course, and so at that time, it was outside the city limits, and so, and I'm not exactly sure, I think it was in existence for, 4 or 5 years, late 50s, early 60s. The last listing I could find for it, it was in the 1963 Rocky Mount City Directory, and I'm guessing it was because by that time, maybe that part of 301 had been taken in by the city limits of Rocky Mount. As Eric pointed out last week's show, Rocky Mount City Directories typically did not have listings for businesses that were outside the city limits, with a rare exception, I think. But in any case, I went back through the city directories that I have in digital format on my computer and couldn't find any listing prior to 1963. But in 1963, there was a listing in the Rocky Mount City Directory for the Patio Restaurant. We're going to be able to get to that point. There it is. There we go. And like I say, it's just, this is the only ad that I found in any city directory, and this was, again, 1963. And you see there the address was just listed as 301 Bypass South, and of course telephone number there. So anyway, as I said, at the end of last week's show, Randy called in and said, I know where that restaurant was. I used to get coffee there for 5 cents a cup. And so when he told me where it was, I knew exactly where it was at that point. I don't recall it being a restaurant, but if you're headed south on 301, as you go under the 301 bridge, that is Nashville Road, the Nashville Road bridge that goes over 301, you're headed south. A little ways past on the left-hand side, there's a little blue building. There was a tanning bed place in there for a long time. I think Eric's remember there being a fellow that sold boots and shoes in there for a while. But anyway, item number two, Lee, there was 2 entrances to that restaurant. One was from Arbor Lane. In fact, if you're coming from Rocky Mount on Hammond Street, on Nashville Road, excuse me, when just before you get to the bridge going over 301, you turn left, that's Arbor Lane, and Arbor Lane curves around and comes back out to 301. So what you're looking at here is where Arbor Lane comes into 301, and there in the far right-hand side of the picture, beside that house, is the actual building that was the Patio Restaurant in early 60s, late 50s, early 60s. And so anyway, I did a screenshot on this, and it's a little bit off the page, but anyway, on the far right-hand side of the screen, that is it. So let's go ahead, Lee, and put up item number 3. This is a little better shot for people to kind of, there you go. So if you're riding down 301 and you're headed south of 301, it's to be on your left, as I said, as you go under the National Road bypass or overpass. And I think it's empty now. I think the last business that was in there was a tanning bed place. But there was indeed a man who sold boots and shoes in there for a number of years. There's been a bunch of, I call them fly-by-night businesses that pop in for a month or two and then go out. At one point, a lot of people would have yard sales there. I've been quite a few yard sales there over the years too. But anyway, that was where the patio restaurant was, and again, it was run by a lady named Miss Patsy Ruby Hooks, not Patsy, Ruby Hooks. And I'm not sure how much further. Oh, we got a call. Hello, caller. Hello, you on the air?
All right, that building where you're looking at right there, that person that was in there selling those boots and shoes and whatever, name was Alan Clemens, and he was a Red Wing work boot distributor, and that was his physical location for some time.
Okay, I remember when he was in there. I sure do. Yep.
He was not from this area, but he seemed like he was from up in West Virginia or somewhere, but he came here in the Rocky Mountain. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I used to buy Red Wing work boots from him and whatever when he was involved in that physical location.
Did you ever eat there when it was a patio restaurant?
No, I do not ever remember that ever being a eatery.
A lot of people apparently did, and I surely didn't, but...
Well, in the 1960s, I would have been 20 years old.
Yep.
But I do not remember that being an eatery.
Well, I would have been a little bitty fella, but I don't remember it either, so don't feel bad.
Across the highway over there on 301 on the southbound side, there was a truck stop there that was longly known as Ernie's Grill.
Oh, I remember that very well, too. Yeah, sure do. All right, buddy. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Okay. So we're going to talk about a little bit later on in the show tonight a couple more restaurants too that I had never heard of. So don't go anywhere. We'll talk about those a little bit later on. There was some discussion last week too about Hoggard Van Motors. If you remember, they were located in that area where the Coastal Cafe was. And so I did a little bit of research. I was really curious about the length of time that there was a business at both those addresses, 411 South Church Street and 413 South Church Street. And at one time, the same people owned both of those locations, both properties. But anyway, after last week's show, Wallace sent me a picture that he had gotten from a book, and it just so happened, I've got a copy of that same book. I think he gave it to me, in fact. So I went and pulled my copy of the book and scanned the image. So Lee, item number 4, if you would. In 1947, this picture, Charlie Killebrew took this picture. I'm sorry, Bugs Behringer took this picture, not Killebrew. Bugs Behringer took this picture. And as you can see there, the gentleman in between these two gentlemen is on crutches. And from what Wallace was telling me, and this makes perfect sense, this was in 1947, so World War II is only a couple years out now. And there were, of course, hundreds of thousands of men came back from the war with various injuries, some missing limbs, some paralyzed from spinal cord injuries or severe brain injuries or whatever. So anyway, I sincerely looked, tried to find an article that specifically addressed Hoggard Van Motors providing a car to a handicapped individual or disabled individual. But so far, and I've not done looking, but so far I've not found such an article. But this picture was actually in a book, one of Monica Fleming. You've heard me mention her before. She's done a wonderful 2 or 3 books now, in fact, about the history of Rocky Mount. And this picture was in that book. And the caption reads, another car dealership was Hoggard Van Motors, who sold Oldsmobile and Hudson, okay? And so anyway, we're thinking that probably this picture was, kind of the theme was, hey, if you're handicapped or disabled for whatever reason, whether you're a war injury victim or what, now you can get a car with an automatic transmission. And that was the whole theme here. In fact, I was surprised to find, I did a little research about that, and I'll share a little bit about There was a question come up too. Eric had called me and asked me to do a little digging into the Oldsmobile brand name. And and I thought I remembered from many, many years ago hearing that the Oldsmobile brand name was named by a man with the last name of Olds, O-L-D-S. Well, sure enough, in 1864, a gentleman named Ransom Olds was born in Geneva, Ohio. In 1887, Mr. Olds developed a steam-powered car. By 1893, Mr. Olds' steam-powered car becomes the first American car sold abroad, but the ship sinks on the way to India and the car is lost. So he was the first one to manufacture an automobile that was to be shipped overseas, and it was, in this case, being shipped to India, and on the way, the ship sank and the car was forever lost. In 1896, he builds a gas-powered car and starts motoring around Lansing, Michigan. By 1897, Olds and Lansing business people start the Olds Motor Vehicle Company and build 4 cars. The Lansing-based manufacturer is the first company organized specifically to produce cars in quantity. And I always thought Ford Motor Company, Henry Ford, was the one who initiated that type of manufacturing, but in fact it was Mr. Olds. So 1900, the Oldsmobile name was first used. 1900 was the first cars that were officially called Oldsmobile. By 1901, Detroit plants were destroyed by fire and Olds returns to Lansing, Michigan. 1908, Oldsmobile joins the newly organized General Motors Company as one of its first 2 operating divisions. The other one was Buick. So Buick and Olds were the first 2 official General Motors brands or car lines. 1916, Oldsmobile was the first to use a V8 engine in their cars. 1916. I had no idea that V8s were around that far back. But in 1916, Oldsmobile had the first V8 engine. From 1927 through 1929, Oldsmobile employment grows from 7,000 with up to 7,000 employees with 12 new buildings. In 1935, the 1 millionth Oldsmobile is built. By 1942 to 45, Oldsmobile production ends, and Oldsmobile workers make 48 million rounds of ammunition, 140,000 aircraft machine guns and tank cannons. 1949, the Rocket V8 is introduced. 1950, Mr. Olds dies. In 1958, Oldsmobile became the nation's 4th largest automaker. By 1965, they were employing 15,000 people in Lansing, Michigan. 1968, Hearst and Oldsmobile rolled off the assembly line and were shipped to dimmer tool and die for conversion. The list goes on and on. Of course, sadly, in the year 2000, GM announced that it will phase out the Oldsmobile division after literally over 100 years of operation. From 1887, he built his first steam-powered car. It was 1900 when the name Oldsmobile was first used as a brand name, and in 2000, GM phases out Oldsmobile. There's a couple more points here, but interesting thing that came about when I was looking for this, there was some discussion about this year model, 47 or 48 year model, being the first car with automatic transmission. However, what I found out, if you would, Lee, put up item number 5 for our viewers. In 1950, this ad came out right here. And over on the right-hand side, if you can zoom in on that, Lee, that little paragraph, it says, I'm going to get my buddy Holly glasses on here so I can see myself. But it says, fully approved, constantly improved, Hydromatic still leads the way. And it goes on to say, back in 1939, Oldsmobile pioneered Hydromatic, the first fully automatic transmission. And ever since then, even during the war, advancement after advancement has been built into Hydromatic drive. Today, when you buy a Hydromatic Oldsmobile, you buy the most popular of all fully automatic transmissions, a perfect partner for rocket engine power. So invest in 11 years of engineering leadership, rocket ahead with Oldsmobile Hydromatic. So actually it was Oldsmobile in 1939 who were the first automobile manufacturers to produce in mass quantity and put into production a fully automatic transmission for their automobiles. So by 1947, when that picture of people were just looking at, they had been putting automatic transmissions in cars for some time. I'm sure they were more expensive. How much more, I don't have a clue, but there was probably in the 1940s, except for a few fairly well-off people, I would imagine, most cars were still, manual transmission, stick shift, if you will. And so it was just, Oldsmobile was a very fine car line. We got a call. Let's get a call. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
All right. One other kind of interesting thing about the years of World War II, I don't think there was any American-made cars for the year model of 1943. All the car manufacturers were tooled up and dealing with the war effort.
Right.
And 1943 kind of lost touch with automobile production, and there were no new cars available in the American market in 1943.
I've read that too. I sure have. And after the war was over with, there was kind of a boom in the automotive industry because people coming back from the war, GIs wanted cars. They had a little pocket money in their pockets, and so it was a booming industry for many years after World War II was over with.
Right.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Okay. While I was looking to see what I could find about this story and the automobile product line and automatic transmissions and the handicapped or disabled people, I stumbled across this picture, and it's kind of grainy. The quality's not very good. I do apologize. But in 1948, this picture right here appeared in the Rocky Mountain Telegram, January 31st, 1948. And if there ever was a who's who of automobile dealers in Rocky Mount, this would be it. I'm going to read these names off to you. You'll recognize most, if not all of them, if you're familiar at all with the history of Rocky Mount automobiles. It says, Rocky Mount's automobile dealers thought they would find a contrast in weather when they returned last night from a national convention in Chicago. They were doomed to disappointment, however. All of them appeared in good spirits as they politely posed for cameramen at the station before rushing home to their families. The convention was the annual session of the National Automobile Dealers Association held this week in the Windy City. In the photo above are most local dealers. Howard Rose of the Buick Company vanished before the picture was taken. Reading left to right are Lyman Hoggard of Hoggard Van Motors, Don O. Bullock of Bullock Auto Sales, Braxton Wilson, Smithfield dealer, Bernard H. Taylor of Bernard Taylor Motor Company, Alan Mims of Alan Mims Incorporated, David Davenport of Davenport Motor Company, Ray Bandy of Ray Bandy Company, Flake B. Chipley of Flake B. Chipley Incorporated, Dick Cadell of Cadell Motor Company, and W.R. Deans of Deans Motor Company in Nashville. This, as I said, this was like a who's who of automobile dealers here locally in 1948. And these gentlemen all together include Mr. Rose from Rose Buick, all went to Chicago for a dealer meeting and came back hoping to find a little better weather, but January around here was probably not much better than it was in Chicago. You see they're all bundled up with heavy coats and scarves and hats and everything else. I just thought it was a neat picture. Like I said, the quality of the photograph is not very good, but it was just a neat old picture with some neat names to reminisce about. Okay, it's time for our first commercial break. Lee, let's go ahead and take that break now. When we come back, we're going to show you some ads and some more pictures. We're going to talk about some things some more ads that we're going to show you from then and today versus type pictures. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Wayback Wednesday.
Today, having the right healthcare plan tailored to your specific needs is vital to your peace of mind. The question is not if you will need the coverage, but when. And when that time comes, you want to be prepared. With the rising cost of medication, medical procedures, and doctor visits, you should know which is the right insurance plan for you. From life insurance, affordable health care, to Medicare, there are a lot of insurance options available, and choosing a plan can be overwhelming. Having Gus Tullis as your insurance professional on your side will give you peace of mind, because you will know you are covered with the insurance that meets your needs.
Hello, my name is Gus Tullis of Gus Tullis Insurance, and I've been helping people with their insurance needs for well over 20 years. Call me today. I'll answer any question you have. 252-937-6913. Looking forward to hearing from you.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service, we offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family, and we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
There's a main nerve that leaves your back that goes into your hip and goes down your leg. It's called the sciatic nerve. A back injury can put pressure on that nerve, causing pain, numbness, tingling. Chiropractors can actually help that. At the Hammer Chiropractic Center on Sunset, we know exactly what to do. We have very good relationships with the doctors in Rocky Mount. We like to co-manage people's care. Some medications may help us do our jobs, and our jobs may help their medications work better.
And we are back. I said at the top of the show, I was kind of interested in the history of 411 and 413 South Church Street for a number of reasons. Number one, that Coastal Cafe, I don't recall ever eating there. I think it was gone way out of business before I came along or was old enough to know anything about it. But there was a fairly long history at 413 where Hoggard Van Motors was. In fact, I found reference to several businesses. So I kind of went on a little journey, if you will, and did some searches in the newspapers.com website on the 411 South Church and the 413 South Church to see what was there over the span of several years. And so it was a little surprising to find the various different types of businesses that occupied those spaces up until the time the building was demolished. And I looked and looked and looked, tried to find a photograph or some kind of newspaper article or something referencing the time that building at 413, where John Hoggard Van Motors was, and later John Van Motors, when that building was demolished. I have not given up hope of finding such an article or a photograph, but so far I have not found one. But that being said, when I went to looking, searching for the address, sometimes, and this happens sometimes when the article print might be a little bit blurry or whatever, you can search for 413, for example, and you may see something that pops up with the 411 address and vice versa. So that being said, item number 7, Lee, this was in 1970, this ad appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram, actually September 24th, 1970. And it was an advertisement for a free stereo or a Hamilton zigzag sewing machine. And there was a drawing, of course. But you see at the bottom there, it was called Smith Sewing and Music. What a combination. You could put sewing machine and stereos in the same store. But Smith Sewing and Music Company was located at 411 South Church Street, which, if you recall, was the address of the Coastal Cafe in prior years, several years prior to this. And so I thought, well, that's interesting that the cafe went out, and then in later years, this Smith sewing machine place went in there. And this was the first year that I saw a reference to them being at this location at 411 South Church Street. But in 1970, this Smith Sewing and Music Company was located there at the same spot where previously Coastal Cafe had been. Okay, so then I wanted to see I went year by year, just as close as I could, to see what was at that location each year. So the next ad I found at 411 South Church Street was, believe it or not, another ad at the same location for a different company called Tape Outlet. And it said things people like. You see at the top there: tapes, tape players, accessories, excellent buys. Tape Outlet open till 9 p.m. at 411 South Church Street. So this is a different company, obviously. It's 2 years after Smith Sewing and Music was occupying the space at 411 South Church Street. This Tape Outlet. In 1972, I'm going to take a wild stab and say they were probably selling 8-track tapes. But in any case, that's what was there at the address of 411 South Church Street in 1972. Okay, let's move on then, Lee. Item number 9. By 1975, there was yet another business operating out of there, and this article appeared in December 23rd, Rocky Mount Telegram, December 23rd, 1975. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll just read the first part of it here. And you see the headline: money is raised by radio station. And in Prince Ike, that's a disc jockey on a radio station, Prince Ike, a disc jockey at radio station WRSV Soul 92 at 411 South Church Street, has been on the air since noon yesterday in an attempt to raise money for needy families of this area. According to Charles Johnson, WRSV station manager, Prince Ike will broadcast until he collapses. Bless his heart. Pledges of over $1,200 have already been received at the station. Money collected will be used to purchase toys and food certificates to be distributed among needy families in the Rocky Mount area. I don't recall Soul 92 being at this location, but they, in 1975, they were indeed at the same spot that had previously been occupied by Coastal Cafe, the Smith Sewing and Music Center, the Tape Outlet, and now, of course, by 75, it was WRSV's home. Okay, so moving on, did a little more digging, did a little more searching. By 1978, item number 10, if you would, Lee, this ad appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram. Going on vacation? Don't leave home before having your car tuned up for a safe and enjoyable trip. See ProTune Limited for expert engine tune-up, carburetor overhaul, brake and air conditioning service for a carefree trip. 411 South Church Street. So what is it? 5 different businesses now that were located in the same spot between the early 1960s and the late 1970s. And so I don't know that there was a continually operating business every year during that stretch, but there wasn't very much of a lapse in between each of these businesses opening up there and running for a few years, sometimes 1 or 2. But, you know, back at that time, apparently it was a pretty hot spot. Anyway, so again, that was all those spaces we were looking at there, from the Carolina Cafe through the Smith Music and so forth, and the Tape Outlet, and then the radio station and the ProTune. They were all at 411 South Church Street. And so I had actually been looking for 413 when I found all those. But I did find some locations, or businesses I should say, at 413 South Church Street that were there after John Van Motors had left. And if you recall, John Van Motors eventually became O.B. Smith Olds, and O.B. Smith Olds left there, I think it was 1975 or 6, somewhere along in there, and moved out on the bypass. Okay, by 1980, item number 11, if you would, Lee, by 1980, another business had moved into 413 South Church Street, and it was Perry's Transmission Center. You see the address there, 413 South Church Street. I can't say I recall this business, and that's kind of strange to me because during this time I was intently working in the automotive parts area. I had worked for 3 or 4 different automotive parts places. I worked for Davis Company Auto Parts. I had worked for a place called the Parts World over on Sunset Avenue. I had worked at Chipley Lincoln Mercury in the parts department, and I was pretty familiar with most of the garages and places around town. but I can't say I remember this Perry Transmission Center, but they were located in the same building, in the same space that had previously been Hoggard Van Motors, and of course later John Van Motors, and then O.B. Smith Automobile, and by 1980, Perry's Transmission Center was in there. Okay, that was 1980. Then there was a bit of a lapse, and we fast forward a bit to August of 1988, and I found a really neat ad that was just a bunch of local businesses that were supporting local churches. And so there was really not a bunch of fancy advertising. It was just the name of the business and the principal or principals and the address of the business. And there must have been, 25 or 30 of these. And the interesting thing is that these ads ran almost continually for a better part of 10 years. Now, I don't know if they ran every day or every week. I'm not saying that they were that often, but one business in particular ran an ad in this section of the Rocky Mount Telegram, basically supporting the local churches every year for 10 years. Item number 12, if you would, Lee. August the 20th, 1988. Might want to zoom out on that a bit there. And this is a bit grainy, but you can tell it's a United Electric Service, and Mr. Jerry Adams, who just happens to be a neighbor of mine right down the road from me. But Jerry and his son, Jerry Jr., occupied 413 South Church Street as United Electric Service. Now, I didn't realize that because when I first met Jerry Adams and in his association with United Electric, he was a little bit further south on Church Street. I forget the exact address, but he was not too far from Davis & Company Auto Parts, where I had worked back in the late 1970s. So anyway, by this time, Jerry had bought 413 South Church Street, and actually ended up buying 411 too. He owned both of those locations, both spaces at one time. But as I said, this ad was just one, it was a whole page ad of local businesses that were basically saying, hey, we support local churches, and it was, this was in July, so it was not, August, it was in August of 1988, so it wasn't a Christmas special thing or an Easter special thing. It was just a bunch of local businesses that were supporting the local churches in Rocky Mount. And like I say, this type of ad, a full page ad, ran for several years. Now, this was in 1988. The very next year, this ad appeared, item number 13, if you would, Lee, in the Rocky Mount Telegram. And this is a religious ad, if you will, but this was just United Electric's own ad, and it was still located at this point at 413 South Church Street. But you see at the top, it says, "The Lord preserveth the faithful," found between Psalms 30 and 33. And United Electric Service offering complete 24-hour service, motor rebuilding, rewinding, and electrical contracting. So again, they were located at the 413 South Church Street. This was in 1989. The first ad that I found referenced them at all being there was in 1988. I'm not saying they weren't there prior to that, but that one I just shown was the first one that I ran across. And then this one appeared literally not even a year later, April of '89, this ad appeared. And then, as I said, for literally 10 years, they participated in this church, supporting your local church, and this was the ad that appeared most recently. This one actually appeared in 1998, December of 1998. And it's the same exact ad as the one that appeared 10 years earlier. It didn't change a thing. I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you. Go ahead, number 14, Lee. And number 14, there you go. This is the same ad as it appeared 10 years earlier in that 1988 ad. But this one is 1998, and like I said, it's the exact same ad. United Electric Services, Jerry Adams Jr. and Sr., 413 South Church Street, and of course the phone number there. So I just thought it was neat that for 10 years, Jerry Adams participated in this support your local churches effort, if you will. And I just, I'm not sure how many other businesses participated as well. I'm sure there were others that did the same thing. But certainly for 10 years that they were located at 413 South Church Street, United Electric did participate. Okay. While I was looking around trying to get more information about these businesses at 411 and 413 South Church Street, I started running across other ads that kind of reminded me of the segments that we had done 3 or 4 weeks ago, where we showed an ad from either a Rocky Mount City directory or from a Rocky Mount City phone directory, and then we showed the location of what was at that address present day. Oh, we've got a call. Let's go to, hello, caller, you on the air.
All right, before you get too far away from that block there where the Coastal Cafe and that service station on the corner was, back in the 1950s, the late 1950s, that service station that was on the corner of Hammond Street and South Church Street, that was next door to the Coastal Cafe, that was a Texaco-affiliated service station that was operated by John James. He is the man who started Coastal Wrecker Service, and when Mr. James got away from it, that service station became under the affiliation of Gulf Products, which was associated with Coma Oil Company down on South Church Street, down there south of where the Atlantic Coastline Hospital was.
Mm-hmm.
But John James had a place there that was a Texaco service station, and it later became a Gulf service station.
Yeah, I had a cousin-in-law who worked for John James. In fact, sadly, he got killed in a car wreck. But yeah, I had actually met John James many, many years ago. I sure did.
He had 2 sons, and I think one of them is no longer living, but the other one I see at Smith's grocery store once in a while. But that corner there, this goes back to before the Rick's Hotel was being taken down in
Right.
the 50s.
Right.
Late 50s.
Yeah. Didn't Milton Sharon have that one time too? That station, same one?
Milton Sharon is who run the Hotel Gulf station that was on that corner.
Right.
His brother, Clint Sharon, was the person who wound up taking over Coma Oil Company. The Gulf oil job on South Church Street, I think, is the connection with that Gulf affiliation coming to that service station right there in the backside of the Rocky Mount train station and in the backside of the Rick's Hotel.
Right. That's right. That's
All
right.
right.
Okay, buddy. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Okay. So I was looking around for, like I said, information on 411, 413 South Church Street. And I stumbled across, as I normally do, I'll dig some in the newspapers.com website. I'll go through my digital versions of the Rocky Mount City directory, and then I'll do some Google searches, and I'll go back through pictures I've already got on my computer and see if I find something. Well, I was going through the city directories, and I happened to be in a 1948 version of the Rocky Mount City directory, and I stumbled across this ad. And I'm not sure that I've not shown this on a prior show, but I thought it was neat because I was able to find a picture of the building where this business used to be. The building is now gone, but I have a picture of it. So if you would put up item number 15, Lee, this ad appeared in the 1948 edition of the Rocky Mount City Directory. And you see that it says, "You'll be ahead with Nash. We have a complete stock of genuine Nash parts and accessories. Every service for your car by factory-trained mechanics. See us for new and used cars." I mentioned earlier that group of local Rocky Mount car dealers, and Bernard Taylor was one of the gentlemen who was in that picture. Well, in 1948, Bernard Taylor Motor Company was located at 809 through 811 and even 813, that 3-space section of South Church Street there. And so when I went to find a picture of what's at that spot now, it's a vacant lot there. But I was able to go back. You've heard me say before, Google has the option when you do a search for a street address, it'll sometimes give you the option to look back at several years of images from the same location. And so when I went back to 2007, I actually found a picture of the building where Bernard Taylor Motor Company was located. I'll tell you what, it's time for our next commercial break. So Lee, go ahead and bring it back to me. When we come back from the break, I'm going to show you this picture. It's a neat old building. Sadly, it's long gone now. I don't know when it was torn down. but it's not there now. But when we come back from the break, I'll show you a picture of it, and maybe you'll remember it too. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Wayback Wednesday.
Today, having the right healthcare plan tailored to your specific needs is vital to your peace of mind. The question is not if you will need the coverage, but when. And when that time comes, you want to be prepared. With the rising cost of medication, medical procedures, and doctor visits, you should know which is the right insurance plan for you. From life insurance, affordable health care, to Medicare, there are a lot of insurance options available, and choosing a plan can be overwhelming. Having Gus Tullis as your insurance professional on your side will give you peace of mind, because you will know you are covered with the insurance that meets your needs.
Hello, my name is Gus Tullis of Gus Tullis Insurance, and I've been helping people with their insurance needs for well over 20 years. Call me today. I'll answer any question you have. 252-937-6913. Looking forward to hearing from you.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service. We offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family. And we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
There's a main nerve that leaves your back that goes into your hip and goes down your leg. It's called the sciatic nerve. A back injury can put pressure on that nerve, causing pain, numbness, tingling. Chiropractors can actually help that. At the Hammer Chiropractic Center on Sunset, we know exactly what to do. We have very good relationships with the doctors in Rocky Mount. We like to co-manage people's care. Some medications may help us do our jobs, and our jobs may help their medications work better.
Before the break, I mentioned Bernard Taylor Motor Company was located at 809 through 813 South Church Street in 1948 City Directory. There was no recent picture of the building because the building's been demolished now, but when I did a Google search for that address and went back, go all the way back to 2007, and Google didn't get everywhere. You've seen little cars driving around with a camera on top that spins around and takes pictures. When they started doing this, and I'm not that sure when they first got to this immediate area of the state, certainly in 2007 they were riding around, because I've got some pictures of places that were taken with their equipment as far back as 2007. And then they come around periodically, like 2012, 2018, 19, 2022, and so forth. But in 2007, this picture appeared when Google came through taking pictures. And so if you would put up item number 16, this is located at 809 South Church Street, and it is the location of Bernard Taylor Motor Company back in the 1940s. Maybe someone remembers how long they were there. I did not spend much time researching to find out how long they were located at this spot. And I'm not sure when they opened up there. They were there in 1948, but there you go. In 1948 they were here because I saw them in of course, the city directory. But by sometime later, I think the next picture date after this was 2012, and by 2012, this building had been demolished. That's Dodson Exterminating there to the left, that yellow Mitchell building to the left there. That's Dodson Exterminators. But like I said, this building was still here as recently as 2007 at the address of 809 South Church Street. So anyway, okay. So while I was bouncing around in city directories, and I would go thumb through one and then go to another, I stumbled across this ad, and this caught my eye specifically because it just so happens I had this business in my yard yesterday putting up some new awnings on our house. If you recall, we took a hit from the tornado back in July, and we have a screened-in porch on the side of our house that had a really nice awning all the way around it prior to the storm. And when the storm came through, it just tore that awning all to pieces. And so we had the awning taken down, and just yesterday, Carolina Awning came out and put us a brand new awning up. Did a wonderful job, I might add. But I was a little bit surprised to see this street address. This is located in, by the way, this is 1942 city directory, and this is actually the picture that appeared along with this ad in the 1942 Rocky Mount city directory. And as you can see there, Carolina Awning and Tent, 18 years in Rocky Mount, selling Carolina better built awnings. We make anything made of canvas. You see there to illustrate the picture, it actually shows a couple of canvas awnings hanging off of their building in 1942. And then down below says awnings, tents, truck and trailer covers. Our new home, 804 North Church Street. So I said, well, that didn't sound right to me. And when I went and looked at 804 North Church Street, it wasn't what I remembered. So Lee, if you would, put up item number 18. And I want to bounce back and forth a minute. If you recognize this building, and I did immediately, this was the location that I recall for Rawls and Winston Auto Parts. Now, if you remember from a few weeks ago, we talked about how Rawls and Winston used to be down on South Washington Street. They later moved to this location here. But in 1942, Carolina Awning and Tent was located at 804 North Church Street, which is right here where this blue building is, later to be occupied by Rawls and Winston. So I said, well, I'm not sure this is the same building. And so I went back and forth a few times, and sure enough, Lee bounced back to the prior one. There you go. There's one big difference between this picture here. If you count the windows, there's 3 on each side, the door in the middle there. At some point, they built this, like, the only thing I can call it is a flower bed out in front of the building, and you see the steps go up there to it. That flower bed area was not in the original building, or not attached to it originally, apparently. But in any case, this is where they were. In 1942, Carolina Awning and Tent was located at 804 North Church Street. Now, of course, if you're familiar with the business now, you know they're not here anymore. They're out, there you go, Lee, perfect. They're not here anymore. They're now located at 60, well, what is it? I'll get it right here in a minute. Well, I'll tell you what, put up item number 18, Lee. That was 18, I'm sorry, 19. This is where they are now, 602. This is where Carolina Awning is today. And of course, many of you may remember, this was also a car dealership many, many years ago when I was in high school. This was Ray Bandy Dodge. And so I spent many hours going in and out of this place, picking up parts, delivering parts. As I said, at the time I was working at the Badge Company Auto Parts, and I would quite often take parts down here or go down here and pick up a part and take it back to the store. So anyway, I'm not exactly sure when Carolina Awning moved in here, but in any case, this is where they are now. They do good work again. They did a marvelous job on my awning. I'm really pleased with the work they did. And so if you need any awning work done, be sure and give them a call. Okay, let's move on in. Item number 20, if you would, Lee. This ad appeared in the 1948 city directory. And neat thing about this ad is these drink cartons. I'm almost certain those were metal cartons. It's been a long time since I've seen this design in a Coca-Cola drink carton, but I do recall there for a while they were metal, and I think these are metal here too. But anyway, you see the address, 442 South Church Street, and of course this building is still standing. Item number 21, if you would, Lee, 442 South Church Street. And this picture was also one that Google allowed me to go back, and I picked this year's 2008, actually. This picture here was taken. And if you go by there now, there's a couple trees been planted in front of the building that almost completely obscure the front of this building. And so I went back, and like I said, this was 2008, this picture here was taken, but it's a much better view of the building from the street. You know, something interesting too about this building in comparison to another Coca-Cola building I've seen recently. I had the occasion to go to Wilson literally last Saturday, and I had the occasion to be downtown Wilson and came by the old Wilson Coca-Cola bottling company. And that building to me looks to be much larger and appears to be older too, in fact, than the one here in Rocky Mount. And I was surprised by that the Wilson Coca-Cola bottling company, like I said, I may be mistaken, but it sure to me looks to be a bigger building, and it looks to be an older building. But in any case, this building is still standing. We've shown this building in prior shows. There's a gentleman who's got it now. I guess he's still got it. I met him a few years ago, but he came out here from, I want to say, New York or Pennsylvania, somewhere up in the northern part of the country. And I think he had ideas of renting space out in this building for different types of businesses, and I'm not sure how well that's worked out. But in any case, I ride by there occasionally, not very often, but occasionally. And I never see a lot of activity around the front of it, but I see occasional cars pulling the back and the chain link fence around the back. So someone's doing something with it. I'm just not sure what. Okay, let's move on then. Item number 22, Lee. Also in a 1942 city directory, I ran across this ad, Saunders Drug Store. You know, we've talked many times about I.W. Rose Drug Store, downtown Rocky Mount, certainly Kaiser Drugs, downtown Rocky Mount, Almond Drugs, downtown Rocky Mount. This is one at Hicks Drug Store, downtown Rocky Mount. This is one I did not recall. Saunders Drug Store, that 1942 I was not thought about, obviously. But in any case, they were located at 130 South Main Street, which is, of course, on the Nash County side of Main Street, in the 1942 Rocky Mount City Directory. And so I wanted to see what was there now. And so I pulled up Google, punched in this street address, 130 South Main, and lo and behold, Lee, if you would, put up item 23, right beside Almond's Drug Store, just to the left, that building right beside, immediately to the left of Almond's, is where Saunders Drug Store was in 1942. Now, there's been a couple of different businesses there over the years. There was a jewelry store there, right next door also as well. I forget the name at the top of my head, but in any case, I don't know when Almonds moved in, sometime after 1942, I'm sure. But I just thought it was ironic that in 1942 there was a drugstore at 130 South Main, and then some years later, Almonds Drug moved in directly next door. And I think Almonds is, I don't know, 128, maybe something like that. But anyway, side by side. Obviously the building is still standing too. So, okay. Moving on then, number 24, if you would, Lee. This ad was in the 1948 Rocky Mount City Directory. Can we zoom out a bit, Lee? Get a little better view of there. You see it says Warren Concrete Products. Mr. Fred Warren Jr. was the proprietor, located at 525 South Franklin Street. I thought, I don't recall there being a concrete block place on South Franklin Street, but of course there was in 1948. This was at 525 South Franklin Street. So I wanted to see what was there now as best I could, and so I did a Google search of the address, and lo and behold, there's a vacant lot there now. To kind of give you an idea where this is, that's the Coca-Cola bottling place on the left hand side, that white building in the distance off to the left. Right directly in front of us, that brown building there was the old Pearsall Machine Works building. It was also the power plant, not power plant, but city municipal building for many years back in the early 1900s. Across, kind of behind you, if you're facing this way looking at these buildings, over to your left shoulder would have been that Rocky Mount Hosiery Company. Later years, there was the Honda shop was in there, I think, for a while. But anyway, that's where this is. It's from South Franklin Street, of course. And this blank vacant lot you see here was the location for Warren Concrete Products in the late 1940s, 1948 specifically. Okay, I mentioned earlier too that I ran across a couple other restaurants that were unfamiliar to me. I'm hoping some of you can shed some light on these. They go way back. This first one here is back from 1943. And it was the J.L. Batts Cafe, and you see specializing in barbecue and Brunswick stew. Well, my immediate thought turned to Buck Oldham's and Bob Melton's when I think of barbecue and Brunswick stew. Josh Bullock's too, to a lesser extent, but I always spent more time at either Bob Melton's or Buck Overton's. So when I think about barbecue and Brunswick stew, I think Bob Melton's first, Buck Overton's second, but I never heard of J.L. Batt's Cafe. And you see the address is listed Highway number 301, not north, not south. So this was totally new to me. Maybe someone remembers something about Mr. Batt's Cafe, but this was the only ad I could find. And again, this was from 1943. And this was in the 1943 Rocky Mount City Directory. Okay, moving on. You know, quite often we kind of forget about things in history and how much things have changed, and nothing says change more so than this next ad, number 27, Lee. I had to stop and just pause here a minute when I pulled this ad up. This was a listing in the 1943 Rocky Mount City Directory, and you see the heading there, Restaurants Colored. It seems really odd now to think that there would be a listing for colored restaurants, but of course in 1943 we were very much still very segregated throughout the country, and there were indeed colored restaurants, and there were 3 listed in this category. You see that Mr. Brooks Cafe there, I say Mr., could have been a woman, I'm not sure, but Brooks Cafe at 118 Thomas Street. And then down below, these other 2 were also listed in the same category of colored restaurants. Gladys Fobbs Cafe at 209 North Main Street, and then Whitfield's Cafe at 617 West Thomas Street. Obviously, all these are long gone now. You know, these businesses have long closed up and moved on. But I just thought it was interesting to see an ad that from a bygone era, you don't think about this stuff anymore. But sadly, for a lot of people, this was a reality in the 1940s all over the country. You know, a lot of blacks were not even allowed in restaurants that were frequented by white people, and so some enterprising African Americans started their own restaurants, and some did quite well. Okay, Lee, let's move on. This picture I think we've shown in a prior show, but I stumbled across it again in a collection of old Charlie Killebrew pictures, and I just thought it was neat. It's Howard Street looking north, and you see the Planters Bank there on the corner on the right-hand side, at far, well, it's about middle way of the picture, but on the right-hand side of the street if you're looking north there, facing north, going down Howard Street. And then lastly, this last picture was one I found, also one of Charlie Killebrew's pictures, and it was just a comical picture. If you notice, the gentleman is standing outside his car, scratching his head. He's at an intersection, and you see the one-way sign there in front of his car pointing to the right, and also to the right, there's another sign that says no right turn. So he's at an intersection with a direction that says one way pointing to the right, but at the same time the sign says no right turn. So which way do you go? Had this fellow scratching his head. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us tonight. Lee, bring it back to me. I want to thank those that called in, as always, and thank you for your input. Always good to hear from the viewers, and those that call me after hours, I appreciate you too. Or after show, I mean to say, not after hours, but after the show's over with. You know, I did got an interesting suggestion, and I'm going to try to work on this. Bob, just so you know, I did not forget your suggestion. I think it's a great suggestion, by the way. Bob League suggested that we put together some shows, if you will, based on businesses that have been in business for 100 years or more in Rocky Mount. And I've got some businesses already in mind. There's several that come off the top of my head. I can think of 3 or 4. And so we're going to start putting together some information. I'll be reaching out to some of these owners who are still operating or still involved with some of these businesses that have indeed been in business for 100 years or more in Rocky Mount. So the next few weeks we'll be taking these on one at a time. So you'll make sure to tune in. You want to see these shows talking about these businesses that have been stapled in Rocky Mount for over 100 years. That's going to do it for us tonight, folks. Thanks again for watching. Have a great week. Take care of yourselves and be kind to one another. We'll see you next week with more Wayback Wednesday. Good night.